Joining me now live in our Lagos studio to discuss the major challenge with liquefied petroleum gas utilization, inconsistent availability, and also the galloping price of gas with the attendant depot landing cost and other associated charges. I have with me John Yakubu, the Vice President, Mid-West Zone, Nigerian Association of Liquefied Gas Marketers. Thank you very much for joining us, John Yakubu, this morning. And we also have Mr. Bassi Essien as well, the Executive Secretary of the Association. Good to have you at the breakfast show this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Now let's start with you, Bassi. Now, looking at the fluctuations we've seen in the price movement of cooking gas, it has risen sharply, and that's one of the biggest bane, the cost of energy today in Nigeria. How do we manage the situation? What's responsible? What's fueling this, really?
Yeah, thank you. A major issue about LPG is availability. Right now, we have a supply of about 65% coming from importation and 35% locally sourced. So once we don't have enough of this, there's going to be a problem. Demand and supply issue comes in. Right now, we are the net exporter of LPG and at the same time net importer of LPG.
Quite a confusing reality.
Exactly. So where we don't have abundant supply, steady supply, and whenever there is a gap, definitely the price metric starts playing itself out. So right now, because where the domestic supply is not even enough to take care of our consumption, once there is a problem with the imported arm, there's a gap, and that gap triggers up scarcity and the price. The other issue is the product itself is bought priced in dollars. It's a depletion of the forex exchange any of the country, and we don't have a particular specific window for FX for cooking gas importers. So they have to source for foreign exchange at a very high rate. And of course, when the attendant charges everything.
So in simple economic terms, all these bottlenecks will result in the hike in the price of gas.
Definitely, of course.
Simply, let me bring you in now, John. Looking at the fact that we need to also establish a stronger penetration of gas in the country now, looking at cooking gas. We've seen the federal government trying to mimic or have a transportation model, looking at the transportation and distribution of petrol, and then trying to work along this, having such infrastructure or model with cooking gas in the country. How do you think this would likely bring down the price of gas? We know there are issues with our distribution using the model for petrol. How do you think this would be different for gas?
Well, I want to quickly say that the federal government should be more concerned about the availability of gas now than talking about a model that will take care of
there's a necessary conversation to be had.
I agree, but because when you talk about transportation, you're talking about movement of gas from the coastal area probably to the hinterland. Honestly speaking, the gas sector have been deregulated. Deregulated in the sense that even all the places you buy gas in Nigeria today, imported gas, you don't buy them at the same price. So for federal government now to begin to talk of price equalization fund of taking care of the transportation from the coastal area to the hinterland is something that we don't understand. Nobody have cried out to federal government to say we cannot take gas from Lagos to Benin, we cannot take gas from Lagos to Port Harcourt.
Why is this difficult for you to understand the stance of government?
We don't understand, because the gas sector have been completely deregulated. We don't want a situation where they come back again now to want to begin to defraud the federal government by stipulating, maybe saying that, oh, if you take a truck of gas from Lagos to Kaduna, government have to come in and pay subsidy. We don't want anything subsidized. It's been deregulated. The shameful aspect is what we wanted to take care of. You just asked the question, how do you have a production capacity of 22 metric ton of LPG in Nigeria, and what you are giving the domestic market a paltry sum of 400,000 metric ton of that gas, exporting over 21.6 metric ton of LPG. Now, at the same time, we go outside, bring in another 600,000 metric ton. You pay for the freight, exporting it, then you pay for freight again, and Nigerians are daily paying for this. We first of all, let's thank LNG that gives us about 400,000 metric tons of what we consume. But I think they can do better if assisted by federal government. Government should begin to think of assisting LNG to make sure that we have full domestication of what we produce rather than exporting and bringing it back. That is what we expect the federal government to be involved in, rather than talking of PEV, Petroleum Equalization Fund. Oh, if Kedo Nigeria Limited is taking LPG from Lagos, we want to pay him an additional amount for transporting it. We are not crying. Why are they crying more than they believe? There's no way you can get LPG for the same amount of money even within Lagos. Okay. If you are buying 12 kg for 2 naira in Ikoyi, you cannot buy the same. You cannot buy the same 12.5 kg in Ikeja. Okay. So we are appealing to federal government. Drop the issue of Petroleum Equalization Fund so that you don't come in and find a space.
Mr. Yakubu, we'll just have to switch over to Mr. Bassi now, talking about the federal government also commissioning efforts towards ensuring that we have improved penetration of gas in the domestic market. Now we're looking at the commissioning in Oredo local government, that's the facility in Ulugbo. How do you think this also plays out really? I would come to you having your reaction just a little bit after Mr. Yakubu also talks about this. I want just looking at the volume of this project, the capacity it can bring on board in real economic terms. Just about 30 seconds.
Well, Ulugbo, we're touched out, and by the grace of God, was expected to produce about 40 trucks of LPG in a day. And it has been commissioned. But the unfortunate thing is that the gas in Ulugbo will have been issued out to portfolio investors, people who don't have planned, people who have not planned to put this LPG. What do you do daily? You can imagine my gas plant is less than 8 kilometers from Ulugbo gas processing plant. But I see somebody from Kano coming to meet me in Benin, selling paper to me to say, please, can you buy gas from me? This is a man who have no 10 kobo investment in LPG. So we want to appeal to federal government, want to appeal to NPDC. Don't take this gas to portfolio investors. Rather, take it to our members who have invested heavily, who have LPG plant across the country, so that we can take these things to Nigerians.
Okay, now we have to wrap up our conversation just in less than 30 seconds now. Mr. Bassi, I would like a reaction. Looking at NLNG Train 7 as well, we're expecting construction has already been commenced, and then we're also expecting Train 8 to also come into bear. But looking at the announcement from the MD of NLNG expecting the supplies of 40% of LPG gas into the domestic market, how does this also translate to satisfying our local consumption? Please, quickly, for lack of time.
The project is commendable, because at the end of the day, it's going to add about 7.6 million metric tons of gas to the already 22 million metric tons in production. And by that, it's equally going to assist the domestic market itself, because by the time it's completed, the volume of gas for the domestic market will have increased. And particularly with this government decade of gas, and it's coming within that period, we think that it's actually going to meet our gas, the domestic gas supply. And truly, again, too, it even adds to the government purse as well, because LNG right now pays about $15 billion as dividend to stakeholders, and about $7 billion as tax to the Nigerian government. It has reduced drastically the gas flaring by 65% to less than 25%, and attracted over 100 billion revenue to the government. So this additional train will actually be a changer. And then with this, we also hope to see a stronger penetration of gas in the country. Thank you very much for your time on the Breakfast Show this morning, Mr. Bassi SN, as well as John Yakubu. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, gentlemen. And then we can only hope that we see the price hike as well also stabilize, moderate, because we have to use gas to cook. It's an everyday necessity. Definitely. Thank you all.